The Zakhaev case, and the problem of the sovereignty of the Krai. The minute the government usurps sovereignty, the social agreement is broken, and all ordinary citizens, rightfully returning to their natural freedom, are forced rather than obliged to obey. Jean-Jacques Rousseau and Judicial Proceedings in respect of Mr. Akhmedی Zakhaev and the need for responsibility of officers for crimes. Forward the protracted nature of the two Russian-Chechen wars, which as they continue, acquires all the signs of genocide. More than 220,000 people were killed, of the people, requires raising the question, no matter when, about the responsibility of the top officials, whose orders and decisions led to such tragic actions. The perpetrators from both countries must be held accountable. In this regard, I believe it is fundamentally important that the trial against one of the leaders of the resistance, Akhmedí Zakhaev, is connected with Russia's demand for the extradition of Zakhaev as a citizen of Russia. From the point of view of international law, for a reasoned answer to the question, should Mr. Zakhaev be extradited or not? You must first establish the real citizenship of this person. In this particular case, it is impossible to do with purely formal signs of citizenship, place of birth and residence, by whom and when the passport was issued, etc. The historically formed uncertainty in the state and legal relations between Russia and Chechnya requires a detailed consideration of all aspects of this problem. The fate of not only Akhmedí Zakhaev as an individual is at stake, but also of hundreds of thousands of his fellow citizens, who were not willingly involved in the whirlwind of the Chechen tragedy. I am convinced that the High Court, when deciding the fate of Mr. Zakhaev, will approach the problem precisely from these positions. At the very beginning of a new round of Russian-Chechen friction, which, unfortunately, grew into a fierce war, I was the chairman of the Russian parliament. In other words, he was not a simple witness, but one of the main participants in the events taking place. It is in this capacity that I am ready to present to the High Court and, if necessary, documentary reasons for the following fundamental issues. 1. Is the Chechen Republic a state or a subject of Russia? 2. What is the evolution of Chechnya towards the state from the point of view of Union, Russian and international law in the 90s of the 20th century? 3. What are the consequences and conclusions of the objective and established fact that Chechnya is a state and not a subject of Russia, part of Russia? 4. And, finally, what is the Zakhaev case from the point of view of the analysis of the above issues? Chechen Republic, a state. The very concept of extradition is directly related to other state legal concepts, in particular, such as sovereignty, aggression, crimes against humanity, etc. And the most important thing, in this aspect, is to determine whether the Chechen Republic was a state, since the UN definition of aggression says, aggression is the use of armed force by a state against the sovereignty, territorial inviolability or political independence of another state, or in any other way inconsistent with the Charter of the United Nations, as set out in this definition. Thus, it is necessary to find out whether the Chechen Republic was a state? Yes, it was. I answer this question, because even in the old, many times criticized for undemocraticism, and, finally, the Russian Constitution shot in October 1993, which defines the statuses of the republics of Russia, it is directly stated that the Russian republics are states. Let's not forget that the requirements of the UN describe formal and legal features, and according to them, not only the Chechen Republic, but also any other republic that is part of Russia is a state. Moreover, the UN in its definition, in particular, in paragraph A, far-sightedly provided that we can talk not only about the UN member states, but also about those states that are not UN members. Let's see, what are these non-UN member states? First, it is precisely the republic states that are part of Russia, or that challenge the corresponding requirements of Russia, since their constitutions define them as a state. Second, it was no coincidence that the leaders of the national liberation movements, with the states they had proclaimed, which had not yet received UN recognition, were invited to discuss the problem of UN aggression. Consequently, the Chechen Republic is a state, and in a broad sense, as an element of the national liberation movement, directly regulated, and foreseen, by international law as a possible object of aggression, and in a narrow sense, from the point of view of domestic, Russian federal law, constituted in fundamental laws, in constitutions, and in shot in October 1993, and in the current one on December 12, 1993, which, as noted above, refers to sovereign republic states that are part of Russia. Third, the following circumstance forgotten by lawyers and politicians is extremely important. The fact is that on April 10, 1990, the President of the USSR M.S. Gorbachev signed the Law on the Foundations of Economic Relations of the USSR, Union and Autonomous Republics, which completely equated the former autonomous republics of Russia and other Union republics with the Union republics themselves. Subsequently, in 1990 to 1991, all the autonomous republics of Russia, except for Dagestan, adopted the Declarations on National State Sovereignty, officially recognized by Russia and mentioned in the Constitution of Russia, through the introduction of constitutional amendments. Therefore, all these former autonomous republics, which got rid of the word autonomous by the time the USSR was dismantled in December 1991, were legally withdrawn from Russia and could, if desired, complete this withdrawal in a procedural and legal way, as it was done by all the Union republics, as well as the Chechen Republic, in order not to cause a complete collapse of Russia, through its disintegration. At that time I forced the conclusion of the Federal Treaty, which was signed at the end of March 1992. This is, in fact, the only legal act that returned the republics to Russia, except for the Chechen Republic and Tatarstan. The Chechen Republic did not sign the Federal Treaty, which united all the subjects of Russia into a single state, on March 31, 1992. It did not participate in any elections or referendums held by the Russian authorities after the destruction of the USSR. And according to all internal formal constitutional and international norms of law, the Chechen Republic can be considered as a sovereign independent state. Actually, it was actually considered as such by Russia before the start of the aggression on November 26 and December 11, 1994. And therefore, the actions of federal troops on its territory, starting from November 26, 1994, are aggression in the classical sense of the word, in full, provided for by the definition given by the UN General Assembly, and, accordingly, the citizens of Chechnya are not subject to prosecution in accordance with Russian justice if they have not committed a crime on the territory of Russia. 2. From autonomy to independence, the epithets self-proclaimed, unrecognized, rebellious are often used in relation to the Chechen Republic, which have nothing to do with reality and are provocative in nature. From a legal point of view, the independent Chechen Republic is legitimate absolutely to the same extent as the USSR was legitimate, and today's Russia is legitimate. In April 1990, in the spirit of the reforms carried out by M. Gorbachev to liberalize the Soviet system, the supreme power of the USSR adopted, without exaggeration, 2 laws that are crucial for the peoples of the USSR. April 10 on the Foundations of Economic Relations of the USSR, Union and Autonomous Republics. April 26 on the delimitation of powers between the USSR and the subjects of the Federation. In addition to general provisions, these laws contain a number of articles that radically change the status of, for example, autonomous republics. They are unambiguously equated in rights with the Union republics. For those and others, free self-determination of peoples is recognized, Law of 26.04 St1. Autonomous republics, like Union republics, are subjects of the Federation, Union of the USSR, Law of April 26, Article 1. Territorial disputes between Union republics, autonomous formations, on which no agreement has been reached between them, can be transferred by mutual agreement to the Council of Nationalities of the Supreme Soviet of the USSR, EBID, Article 3. The exclusive jurisdiction of the Union of Socialist Republics represented by its highest bodies of state power and administration includes 2. The acceptance of new Union republics into the USSR and the approval of the formation of new and changes in the status of already existing autonomous republics, autonomous regions and autonomous okrugs. 3. The resolution of disputes between Union republics, between Union and autonomous republics, autonomous formations in the event of their appeal on this issue to the bodies of the USSR, EBID, Article 6, in the Law of the USSR on the Foundations of Economic Relations of the USSR, Union and autonomous republics. Not a single place makes a distinction between Union and autonomous republics. In all cases, regardless of whether it is about powers or obligations, a combination of union and autonomous republics is used. In Article 5, which is called Contractual Forms of Economic Relations of the USSR, Union and Autonomous Republics, in the entire text of paragraph 1, the combination of union and autonomous republics is replaced by one word republics. Point 2 of this article is noteworthy, which seems to have been specially written in order to demonstrate the equivalence of the union and autonomous republics. For example, 2. Union and autonomous republics have the right to establish their representations in the capital of the USSR and the capitals of other republics, supported by the republican budgets. The state administration bodies of the USSR can create, with the consent of the republic, their services and units on its territory. It is interesting to note in the law under consideration, as in the previous one, the all-union supreme power acts as an arbiter in a dispute between the subjects of the federation. For example, Article 6, 5. Disagreements on economic issues between the government of the USSR, Union and autonomous republics, as well as between republics arising in the execution of laws of the USSR, decisions and orders of the government of the USSR, are considered by the Supreme Soviet of the USSR, taking into account the recommendations of the Federation Council. Thus, to be objective, it should be admitted that the Chechens were already at that period, that is in April 1990, they ceased to be the notorious internal affair of Russia. In its decree of April 26, 1990, on the enactment of the USSR law on the delimitation of powers between the Union of SSR and the subjects of the Federation, the Supreme Soviet of the USSR in paragraph 6 decided to propose to the Supreme Soviets of the Union and Autonomous Republics to bring the legislation of the Union and Autonomous Republics in line with the USSR law on the delimitation of powers between the Union SSR and subjects of the Federation. The adoption of the two laws discussed above was preceded by another USSR law of April 3, 1990, entitled On the Procedure for Resolving Issues Related to the Secession of the Union Republic from the USSR. In this law, Article 3 is directly related to Chechnya. Therefore, we will cite it in full. Article 3. In a Union Republic, which has autonomous republics, autonomous regions and autonomous okrugs, a referendum is held separately for each autonomy. For the peoples of the autonomous republics and autonomous entities retain the right to independently decide on the issue of staying in the USSR or in the seceding Union Republic, as well as to raise the issue of their state and legal status. Even such a cursory analysis of the Soviet legislation of the Gorbachev era shows that the Chechen people, as a result of perestroika, received two fundamentally new rights: first, to raise the state autonomy status to the level of a Union Republic, and, as a full-fledged subject of the USSR, to sign an updated Union Treaty, which was thwarted by the GKCHP conspirators. 1. Second, in the event of the RSFSR secession from the USSR, or the collapse of the USSR proper, which is equivalent in principle, to independently resolve the issue of its further state and legal status. These 2 points are of a fundamental nature, and even with the most biased approach, another interpretation is impossible here. The proclamation by the Congress of People's Deputies of the RSFSR on June 12, 1990 of the Declaration of State Sovereignty of the RSFSR was in accordance with the new legislation of the USSR. However, this same legislation corresponded to the proclamation of state sovereignty by the autonomous republics, which until then were part of the RSFSR. The new laws of the USSR did not prescribe to anyone the specific nature of the status or the name of the republic. It must be said that the content of the proclaimed sovereignties varied depending on the state of mind of the authorities of a particular republic. On one point, all the former autonomous republics and regions came together completely. They decisively got rid of the definition of autonomy, which previously emphasized their inferiority in relation to the Union republics. At the same time, I must note that I personally was against such a development of events, but these events, were not related to my personal judgment. The text of the declaration adopted by the Supreme Soviet of Checheno-Ingushetia, Chechen-Ingush Republic, on November 27, 1990 left no doubt that the Chechen-Ingush Republic had become a legally sovereign state. The authorities of the Chechen-Ingush Republic announced their readiness to sign the updated Union Treaty on equal terms with everyone, agreeing with the draft Gorbachev Treaty. the proclaimed sovereignty of the Chechen Republic found understanding in the highest echelons of power in the USSR. For some time now, the state delegation of Chechnya, along with the delegations of other former Soviet republics, has taken an active part in the development of a draft renewed Union Treaty. The new Union Treaty was supposed to be signed on August 20, 1991. Russian propaganda is now imposing in every possible way the opinion that the source of Chechen sovereignty was an armed rebellion. Like, in September-October 1991, a group of armed people led by retired Soviet General Dzhokhar Dudayev illegally seized power, violently dispersing the Supreme Council of the CHIR, headed by Doku Zavgayev. The fact that by this time the Chechen Ingush Republic had legally existed for a year outside the RSFSR is carefully concealed. Thus, it should be noted a special resolution of the Supreme Soviet of Checheno-Ingushetia dated March 11, 1991, which prohibited the conduct of an all-Russian referendum on the unity of the USSR and the introduction of presidential rule in the RSFSR on the territory of the Republic. The Supreme Council of the CHIR, headed by Zavgayev, referred to the Declaration of State Sovereignty of the CHIR of November 27, 1990, according to which the Republic was no longer a part of the RSFSR, and even the USSR. Contrary to the assertions of the Russian authorities, the rise to power of Dzhokhar Dudayev was not a rebellion, although from a legal point of view there were some violations. Indeed, there were rallies in the Republic with various demands, and this was just an echo that swept from Moscow during the coup attempt in August 1991. For all the heat of emotions that took place in September 1991 in Grozny, the Supreme Soviet of Chechnya was not dispersed by force. As the chairman of the Russian parliament, I came to Grozny from Moscow for consultations and came to the conclusion that the local parliament had dissolved itself. The self-dissolution of this parliament was formalized in a legitimate way, that is, in compliance with all legal norms. At the same time, the Provisional Supreme Council of the Republic was formed with the sole task of organizing the elections of a new parliament and new executive authorities as soon as possible. Executive authorities. Due to the fact that it was on these days that the Extraordinary Congress of the Ingush people, represented by deputies of all levels, expressed a desire to form an independent republic and become part of the RSFSR, the Provisional Supreme Council of Chechnya announced the elections of the parliament and the president of the Chechen Republic separately. But here too, there were certain legal violations, which I cannot fail to note. The elections of the president and parliament in the Chechen Republic took place on October 27, 1991, when the victory of General J. Dudayev was declared. Of course, passions were seething in the Republic. There were offenses, quite comparable to those that, for example, Moscow and other regions were experiencing then. Thus, it can be stated that the first president and parliament of the Chechen Republic were the successors of the Supreme Soviet of the Chechen Ingush Republic, although personally I then had doubts about its legitimacy. But the question is why the Russian authorities, speaking about Chechen independence, stubbornly focus on the events of the autumn of 1991, the introduction of the state of emergency by Yeltsin's decree. The Russian parliament was declared illegal. The answer, in my opinion, is that in this way they are trying to declare the Chechen Republic a subject of Russia, an internal affair of Russia, although this issue has long been an international issue. 3. Official recognition of the Chechen Republic by Russia as an independent country. What are the logical conclusions? First conclusion. After the defeat of the Federal Army in the First Chechen Campaign and its official completion with the signing of the Khasavyurt Agreements, August 1996, as well as the Peace Treaty, May 1997, in fact and formally Russia recognized the independence of the Chechen Republic, already for the second time, at first, from the period Dudayev came to power in 1991 and until the start of the war on December 11, 1994. Second conclusion. Regardless of who was the initiator of the Second Chechen War, there are serious questions. Can these treaty and agreements be considered as if not existing just because a certain armed group of Chechen volunteers participated in an armed rebellion in the Republic of Dagestan, and in turn, Russia attacked Chechnya, killing 120,000 people? Third conclusion. These interstate documents were not concluded between individual officials from both sides, but on behalf of the states. Therefore, The disappearance of specific individuals from the political arena cannot make these documents legally null and void, and therefore cannot lead to the automatic annulment of the status of the Chechen Republic. Fourth conclusion. Article 6 of the UN document,